Does the GOP really have a black voter problem? Our next guest actually thinks it's the opposite. So here to discuss his piece on why the GOP actually has a white voter problem is Steve Deace, BlazeTV host of the Steve Deace Show, which we were just on earlier today. So Steve, tell us, does the GOP actually have a white voter problem?
Yeah. And I just want to say it from the outset, I hate talking about this stuff. Okay. I'm a biblical worldview guy, and race, as we articulate it and argue over it in our culture today, is not a biblical concept. I mean, in God's economy, race is just defined way different than what we do. And so I try to avoid it as much as possible. I think I'm not into white boy summer any more than I'm into white guilt. Okay. Just not my thing, you know. But if we're going to have elections where we're going to just, break it down demographically, if that's the way we're going to roll, then I think we have to be honest about the numbers. And one of the things that I've been mystified by this for decades. And I've just kind of come to the conclusion that boomers are tired of being falsely labeled racist their entire lives. And so they're just bound and determined to keep pushing this narrative, if for no other reason, just to defend themselves. But if you look at the data, the reality is that with one election, 2008 with Barack Obama, not even his re-election actually, only with one election, 2008 with Barack Obama, can we actually point to, in this, so far this century, that the black vote was actually decisive in an outcome. Before that, you'd have to go back to 1964 with LBJ, post Civil Rights Act. And then you'd have to go to the first time black voters really made a difference in an American election was when Harry Truman defied the odds and beat Thomas Dewey. And back then, polling was at its kind of proto-nascent stage. And so, and much of black America was still under segregation and in having their civil rights violated. So the white media didn't even poll them, okay? And it was always assumed that blacks would vote Republican post Abraham Lincoln. And so what they found afterwards is that a historic amount of blacks voted for Harry Truman after he desegregated the military post World War II. And that was seen as the biggest step forward for civil rights in America at the time since the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments after the Civil War. And so the polling never caught up with that. Other than those three elections, there has never been an election where black turnout's been exceedingly high or been determinative. The highest black turnout rate we've ever had in the country is 13%. We've hit that 3 times this century. Barack Obama did that twice. They're telling us Joe Biden, an 80-year-old white guy who used to be friends of segregationists, did that in 2020. I remain skeptical. Okay, but that's the only time, 13%. And so now there's this huge focus on can we win more of the black male vote? And Trump did very well by most Republican standards with black men in 2020. He got 18% of the black male vote. But here's the problem, okay? Even if Kamala Harris gets Obama level of turnout of black voters, so they're 13% of the electorate. All right, 55% of that is going to be black women, okay? So if we're talking about 45% of 13% of the electorate, Jill, we're talking about, 6% of the electorate. And then if we're talking about Donald Trump getting like 25%, which would be a 7-point gap increase, which would be massive and would be historic in modern times, you're now talking about improving by only 7 points with 6.5% of the electorate. That math just doesn't work. And the reality is if Mitt Romney has a turnout of married white women akin to what, if you just look at the data, if he turns out married white women the way John McCain did, because Mitt Romney's the only Republican that's ever won independence and lost a presidential election. That happened to him in 2012. And the number one reason it happened is 4 million whites who voted for John McCain in 2008 did not even vote in 2012. And many of them were women. So if Mitt Romney just turns out white women at the rate John McCain did, he beats Barack Obama despite his continued record high black turnout. And one more thing on this that I think it's important for people to understand is we do have a national election, but really we have 50 state elections. Okay, that are then added up and compiled nationally. If you look at the top 10 states for black population in America, okay, only 3 of them are considered battleground states, and the highest one is Georgia. Well, Barack Obama lost Georgia twice while he was getting this record high black turnout. Okay. Most of Black America lives in states that either Republicans cannot lose, like Mississippi, or cannot win, like Maryland. Meanwhile, there are married women and white women in every single state and in great numbers. And well, Steve, we can't win the Karens. Republicans have not lost the white women vote this century. They haven't lost married women since 1996. I live in the suburbs. There's way too many Karens there, but they're not what the majority of women in the suburbs are. Trump actually won. Jill, he won white women both times he's previously ran. Let's be honest, if Donald Trump can't turn off white women, then I'm not sure Republicans possibly can. So all he's got to do, instead of getting 52% of white women, if he got 54% in 2020, he'd be president now. And if he does that in November, he'll be president again.
So how does Donald Trump go about doing this for the white women, trying to get their vote, making sure that on November 5th, they are going to show up and vote for him?
I think that we've got to get back to talking about issues. And I think that the Trump campaign, going back to now competing with them or feeling like I wasn't officially on the DeSantis campaign, like I literally worked for Ted Cruz, but I was a DeSantis supporter. So I'm back in the other guy. All right. So I'm looking at their operation from the outside in. And now, I'm all in trying to help him get elected this time. So now I'm seeing it from the inside out. So I've seen it from both sides. And I've kind of, and it could be wrong, but I've come to the conclusion that they believed they were going to run against Joe Biden the entire time. And that the best way and simplest way to beat Joe Biden was just to point out he has dementia. And if we start talking about issues, particularly culture war issues, then that gives the media and the Democratic Party an opportunity to deflect away from Biden's dementia and talk about the fact, well, you guys want to ban all abortions and you want to round up and all those other things. Okay. And so I think their plan was, we can, for the first time ever, Republicans can win a personality-based election just off of the basis of Biden's senility. And that was their plan.
That's scary.
It is scary.
Because we know what happens when it's personality versus the actual issues. Every single time.
Yes.
But it's only every time, Steve.
Every time. It's 100% metaphysical certitude of American politics. If elections are about issues, Republicans win. And if they're about personalities, Democrats win. And every election, by the way, was determined by which side did the best job talking about the future. Every single time. And so if this is about Trump's presidency, we're going to win. If it's about Trump's personality, we're going to lose. And that's what the Democrats want it to be about. And I think that the Trump campaign, they went out and they got Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita. These are capable people, but they're not ideological people like the people he ran with before. And I think that he thought that they made the determination they needed to run kind of a less of an ideological campaign and run against Biden as an unpopular president with dementia. And I think now that he's been swapped out, they're struggling with their messaging of what to do because they had this entire battle plan in place. When really, and I've heard people say, well, Trump's trying to just do 2016 again. That's actually what I think Trump should do. That's precisely what they should do, meaning that you're running against an unpopular female candidate, okay, that people do not like, all right, for different reasons. I mean, Hillary Clinton was a spent force and Kamala is relatively new, but she's just a moron and annoying, all right? So in that race, what you would see Trump do is say very disruptive, controversial things like Mexico is sending us all of its drug dealers, rapists, and drug mules, right? But then he would say, and then he would pivot and say, and that's why we're going to build a wall and secure the border so those fiends don't get into your neighborhoods and overdose your kids on fentanyl. Right? See what I'm saying? Yep. What they're doing right now is they're going to the Black Journalists Association and they're talking about Kamala being such a phony and fraud that she's not even truly African American, which is true. And by the way, if you watch that clip, don't listen to what bedwetters on X are saying. Watch it for yourself, and you're going to see Trump is winning that audience over as this is going on. There are portions of that audience that are laughing and clapping to things he is saying. All right? But the problem is, if you leave it there, okay, then when that event is over, their comms team and their messaging is going to say, look at these crazy things Trump says. He hates women. He hates black women, just hates blacks, hates women in general. You see what I'm saying? Your campaign, the candidate can't do everything. He's not God. He cannot be omnipresent. All right. What the campaign needs to do is take when Trump walks in there and disrupt it and disrupts their entire paradigm. The campaign then needs to come in with a message that says, and by the way, the same woman that's a phony and a fraud about what her true ethnicity is and her true racial origin is, was a phony phony and a fraud when they made her the border czar and she never visited the damn border. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is a phony and a fraud who admitted with the administration that just gave Khalid Sheikh Mohammed a plea bargain while there are still how many Americans on day 300 over there that are hostages in Gaza. You see what I'm saying? They need to pivot from his disruption to issues. They're not doing that. And so right now they're off message. And all we're talking about is Trump, the person, and not Trump, the president.